Greetings everyone! Today I will review a relatively unknown LED fixture from AliExpress. It is sold by Yuer small fish professional store in the price range of 30 to 40 euros. I bought one during a sale and paid around 28 euros in total. They promise 4 times 10 watt of LED light output, RGBW LEDs and a metal casing. Let's see how this fixture fares. I will use my updated equipment and methodology that I explained in detail in my review of the Shed's 7x18 watt metal fixture. This is a technical review from the point of view of an engineer, so don't expect too much in the sense of it feels good or it looks bright. There is, however, a big surprise relating this product at the end, so definitely wait for that. It changes everything that this fixture has to offer. Let's get right in. The LED par boasts 4 LEDs with a power of 10 watts each. They should be 4-in-1 LEDs with RGBW color mixing. They are not individually controllable, but that is to be expected. The casing is a full steel casing, the fixture has a fixed plug. As stated, the price range is between 30 and 40 euros. If you shop during a sale, you will be able to snag it at lower than 30 euros. Let's go through the description given to us by the seller. This, as they say, aluminium par has a voltage between 30 and 240 volts, a power of 40 watts, we will see about that, 4 RGBW 4-in-1 lamp beads, 4 or 8 channel DMX modes, an angle of 15 degrees, a maximum working temperature of 40 degrees, and a few uninteresting things like voice control, self-propelled remote control, and full color. Yay! The fixture is made from a bent steel plate. Front and back are solid steel too. All this is being powder coated. The coating will wear out if you scratch the surface hard enough, like when opening and closing the fixture, but that is completely fine. It seems like being of an okay quality. A nice thing for the DIYers is that only one type of screw is used, and it is very easy to disassemble the fixture. Together with the very small and handy form factor, the case is one of the best ones I have ever seen from a Chinese direct seller on AliExpress. There is a small stain in the up to now perfect white vest of the case, and that is the absence of rubber feet. For usage, I would expect that this fixture can be placed on the ground, and then rubber feet would be a cheap but substantial improvement. And that being said, the big thing that holds this fixture back in the casing regard is the U-bracket. The U-bracket itself is a relatively thin, 1.5mm thick steel sheet plate with a black coating. Nothing fancy and a bit on the weak side for hanging it, but sufficient. I bought the fixture and did get screws for mounting the U-bracket, however those are M8 and the hole would need M5. They are great screws, but just don't fit. The seller offered to send me the screws when I asked, but since I did not want to order something immediately again, this issue was not fully resolved at the time of writing. However, I'm very confident that I will get a replacement. In a review posted on AliExpress, I read about a whiny loud fan. However, my unit does not contain any fans at all. It seems like Yuer removed it after the negative feedback on AliExpress. Anyway, the fixture is silent and that is great. The LEDs are mounted on an aluminum PCB, which acts as the heatsink. With no significant path for the heat to be conducted to the case, this small heatsink is the only piece that gets rid of the heat, just by convection. This cooling solution is on the one hand very minimalistic, but also barely sufficient for the power of the fixture. Now to an often discarded part of the fixture, the safety features. I'm not too much involved in the fine details of power electronics. However, there are cases where a case made of metal does not need to be grounded. Yet, I don't know if this is the case here. Additionally, I find it personally just good to earth everything anyway. But it is not so clearly cut as it was for some other fixtures. I personally would have liked if this fixture was earthed. And by the way, case, yeah, that pun was intended. This fixture does not possess any regulatory compliance. This means it is not allowed to be used and imported into the EU, as an example. Additionally, the importer has all the responsibility for damages that could come from this electronic device. I don't like that, and it is very unfortunate. Before going into the details of the measurements, I want to prepend a small subjective evaluation here. This mini fixture packs quite a punch. It gets visibly bright and has very narrow beam angles. The only problem seems to be the ununiformity of the light on the edges, for which I did not find an adequate way of measuring. But with that, to the thing you're all waiting for most, the spreadsheets and graphs. Yay! First, I measured the brightness at a distance of 2 meters from the fixture, independent of the angle. The resulting graph can be seen on the right. I measured the brightness with a brightness sensor of a Samsung Galaxy S1020 FE, so probably not the most bright thing ever, but it should be fine for relative comparisons. The measurement was done in lux, and once for all LEDs full on and once for only the white ones on. There are different definitions of the beam angle, and I will give you 2. The angle at which the brightness is 1/2 of the max brightness, and the one where it is 1/10. The manufacturer states a beam angle of 15 degrees, and my measurements support that for the 1/10 angle, being 40 degrees. It is very focused, without any clearly cut edge. This leads this power to be usable for different applications than the normal LED powers. One thing to notice is how bright it gets in the center, almost 1.8 kilolux. It is very bright and substantially brighter than other Chinese LED fixtures that I tested up to today. That being said, they are no wizards and magically get way more light from their LEDs than the others. They are just focusing them more, which I think is a good choice in this case. The manufacturer states that the LEDs have a power of 10 watt each. My measurement contradicts that, with leading to an individual LED power of 7.23 watt per LED. As a disclaimer, the maximum voltage of an LED is not a number set in stone. In the ideal world, one would use a constant current driving method, but that is not the case here. With a constant voltage driving method, you need to use the voltage as the defining number. For my measurements, I took those values as I deemed safe and good, but they may very well be a bit off. Up to today, these voltages were a good indicator of the actual power and corresponded mostly to the advertised power. Either the used LEDs here have a higher forward voltage, which I don't think is true, or the advertised power is wrong, which I suspect is the case. First, I want to put a subjective evaluation here as well. Just from looking at it, the dimming curve for green, blue and white are really good. In fact, better than for any other power I tested up to today. The dimming behavior for red is as always not perfect. There is significant chopping, in particular at lower DMX values. However, to set that into context, it is still way better than all the other fixtures I took a look at. So definitely acceptable. We can see the dimmer board on the right here. It is a pretty straightforward board. The central chip is the brain of the fixture that sends out the PWM signal. This signal then gets amplified by these small chips on the top, so that the LEDs are getting the power. The minuscule size of the amplification chips leads me to believe that this fixture does not have a high power. But we will see that in a bit. With that out of the way, let's go to the measurements. I have explained my methodology in more detail in my review of the 7x18 watt RGBW UV sheds power, but here's the TLDR. The dimming works via PWM, which is the standard way of dimming LEDs. The voltage looks like the picture on the top. From that, we can get the PWM duty cycle and the maximum voltage during the on time. The switching frequency is also measured here. For this dimmer board, it is 21 kHz, which is quite fast and definitely done in a way that there is no visible flickering, even for cameras. Additionally, I measured the on current the LEDs get during the pulse. This was made a bit tricky because, as you may be able to perceive, there's a current spike at the start of every pulse, marked with a red arrow, because YouTube loves those. These are the most important data points I got with this method. The peak voltage is minimally different, but generally identical for every LED. The maximum duty cycle differs quite much. For red, it is 12.5%. For green, it is 39.6%. And for all the other LEDs, it is 47.8%. On the right of the table, there is the current during the pulse, the corresponding power per color, power per LED per color, And then on the right, the total power as supplied by the dimmer board and the total power per LED. The total LED power is 11 watt and the total power per LED is 2.74 watt. This is obnoxiously lower than advertised. They advertised the max power being 40 watts, while the actual power is only 1/4 of that. I want to give to them their high brightness and seemingly good efficiency, yet if they did not lie about the power, it would have been better. None of these LEDs are being overdriven, which is good. However, red gets the high voltage of the PSU and thus may show a lower lifetime. Finally, a quick word on the strobe behavior. I'm only testing the strobe with the menu on the power itself, not with DMX. There we can set a strobe value between 0 and 255 according to the number the pulse time and between the pulses decreases. The light pulse stays at around 25 to 27 milliseconds and you can see the pulse time in the table. Of course, the strobe is overlaid with the standard PWM signal. I did not notice strobe jitter when fading, and there is a very clear non-linearity for the increase in speed, not by measurement, but just by looking at it. It is, let's call it, a bit top-heavy, for lack of a better word. I did not test the DMX control. I am still looking for a good DMX controlling method for my PC. Or rather, I'm still waiting for the funds for that. However, I have no reason to believe that it is not working as advertised, since that is how all fixtures up to now behaved. The manual from the package provides the DMX description for what which channel does. A specialty for this fixture is the IR control via the remote that is being synced together with the fixture. The remote works, and with it you're able to do everything you could do when physically accessing the PAR. It is quite handy, and I like it as a gimmick. However, reception is not good and the IR emission is not that bright, and thus I would not count on it in a critical situation. There is or rather two, sound to light functions. In the first mode, it is off and starts to strobe when the loudness reaches a threshold, and the strobe color is white. In the second mode, it cycles through the primary colors plus some secondary colors based on the beat. Unfortunately, the sensitivity is way too low for normal use. With this low count of sound to light functions and no sound sensitivity dial at all, the sound to light mode is useless. Thanks to the person from Reddit who gave me the idea, I tested if this fixture has a secret menu. Unfortunately, it does not have a secret menu, and if it has one, I was not able to access it. This limits the modifiability significantly, and it is a bit sad. Now to the power supply. It has a 12 volt, 1.5 amp rating, so 18 watt. As you might realize, 18 is smaller than 40. And this means the power supply is not capable of reaching the advertised power. The power supply has an overcurrent protection, or at least switches off, at a power drawn of 35 watts on each side. The idle power for the whole fixture is 1 watt. And the power draw from the wall when all LEDs are on is 12.5 watt. The power supply has not much going for it. However, it is also so low powered that you don't need to do very much for safety or cooling. I added one additional measurement to my set of measurements I do, or set of tests I do, and that is varying the AC voltage that goes into the power supply. I tested the power supply for anywhere between 90 and 240 volts, and it worked flawlessly for every voltage. I can't really analyze the power supply in depth since I'm no electrical engineer. However, what I can do is an efficiency measurement. I measured the power drawn from the wall at different power levels. The power supply efficiency is staying the same whatever current is drawn. The efficiency is around 70%, and because I like being pedantic, I want to tell you that my mains power meter is not that precise, and thus these measurements could very well be off by 1 or 2 watt. This is also reflected by the fact that my LED power measurement and power drawn under full load don't line up perfectly with the efficiency measurements, meaning the mains power meter is not suitable for these low powers. The last time the modification section was pretty big, so not so much for today. The fixture has several problems. First, the low power in comparison to what is advertised, and in case we want to increase that, the insufficient cooling. We can't really do anything about the maximum power due to the absence of a secret menu. The choppiness for red dimming curve is way less atrocious than for most other powers I tested up to today, but it is still far from great. We also can't really do anything about that too. Then there's the mounting bracket problem, but that is hopefully just an error on the seller side, and if it persists, you can use a simple M5 screw bought in the hardware store. Lastly, the missing earthing bothers me. We can, however, retrofit that with a new cable that has an earthing connector. All in all, this fixture does not leave us with many options for modifications. But that is not only because it is locked up, the package we get is pretty well rounded anyway, so not really a big need for modifications. And with that, we get to the wrap-up and the price evaluation. The power works, which is always nice. The case and the form factor present a unique selling point, and I think that this fixture fills that role quite good. That the case is sturdy and of great quality unlocks harder environments. The small beam angle and the high brightness rounds the fixture up. I can't see an immediate fire and health hazard, and it being silent is really great. This power can be used for uplighting and for throwing a beam into a crowd. In every case, you will need multiple ones, maybe 4 to 8. For front lighting, it is definitely too low powered. This power feels like the manufacturer tried to make an actual premium product, which I really appreciate greatly. However, in Germany we have the phrase bemühte sich stets, which often is printed on job references if you did not do a good job. And it can be translated with was always trying his best. And this is really applicable for this power as well. They were definitely always trying, but well, were not so successful. This fixture disappoints for so many reasons. That it is not grounded is most likely the least important one, because you can retrofit that very easily. Missing certifications is a huge one. The bad dimming curve for red with no option to change that is another. That the power is not as advertised is to be expected, but still not okay. Yet that the LEDs themselves are not as advertised. That is another level. Again, disclaimer here that every LED can have every power, just the time it can sustain that and the efficiency are different. So my measurement may be a bit flawed. Also, the difference is not very huge. Lastly, the U bracket error is a problem, and while it by itself is not a big thing, the fact that this can happen so easily leaves not a good impression of the seller. For 30 euros, this thing is great, if you like the form factor. But only then. It is small, with a great case and a narrow but bright light output, while staying silent. For 40 euros, which is the normal price, I have my doubts. And don't forget the whole certification problem. If something happens, you have to pay. However, there's a thing that changes this whole debate completely, that I told you at the start, and you will see what I mean now. Let's compare this fixture to other options a person might stumble upon when looking for a fixture online. First, I will compare it to other Chinese brands like the Shed 7x18 watt RGBW AUV metal casing fixture that costs almost the same. If you want an all-rounder package, get the Sheds. It has higher power, even without modifications, while also having an okay case. The redeeming factor for the Yuer is the silence, the small beam angle, the more appropriate LED voltage, and the form factor, in companion with the great build quality. The Sheds does not even come close in that regard, and that means both products can coexist with each other happily. Then there's the comparison to other brands. Brands that also produce in China but are present on reputable sites. The most comparable unit by power and size is probably one of these battery lights that are sold by many different companies in various shapes and forms and at different price points. The shown Eurolight unit is just an example. Those all have in common that the light output is low, the beam is more or less focused, and they have the same type of steel casing. Of course, our unit is cable bound and not wireless, but the application profile is still the same. For this comparison, I would say that the price of the Yuer is okay. If I had to choose and would not mind the danger of non-certified piece of electronic, I could legitimately choose the Yuer because the Eurolight is way more expensive. Again, if I don't need the wireless and the battery function. I fully understand the reason for the higher price. Battery tech is more expensive than just using a power supply. Next comes the Stairwell quad par profile 5x8 watt RGBW, which I take as the prototype for a quality Chinese import. It costs roughly double, has double the size, double the beam angle, and triple the power. Both are valid choices. If I had the need for the ultimate compactness, I would take the Yuer. If I had the need for that thing in bigger, with certifications and warranty, I would take the Stairwell. So if you think about buying this fixture, I will tell you, go for it. But don't buy it from Yuer. I looked at a reputable German stage equipment store called prolighting.de, and they have a par that looks strangely the same as the Yuer par and is made by Algam Lighting, a French stage equipment importer. And now we can all guess the price. Well, it is 40 euros. So if you are in a European country, well, you have access to the shop prolighting.de or any other of the many shops that sell Algam stuff, you can go there and buy it from there. This fixture, if this fixture is actually identical or with some improvements, I don't know, but it surely has CE certification, warranty, and all the other good stuff that comes from a reputable source. And all that for the same price. The Yuer sells during non-sales. I really like this fixture, and if I need more of them, I would buy them without hesitation, just from the good source and not Yuer small fish professional store. For the moment, the only thing left for me to do is to thank you for your attention. May your path be illuminated by a bright but not burning Chinese LED par, and goodbye.